Well, hello and welcome, everybody. Hey, look at this really crazy looking geometric finite sum. Do you think you could figure it out? There's a couple tricks in here that really kind of mess people up. We're going to explore it in this video. So first of all, the nomenclature or the formulas, the letters they use get kind of confusing because depending on what source you use, this might be an A or it might be a U. There's an R here. And there's an R over here, and they're not the same. See, in the formula, the R means the common ratio, which is what each subsequent term in the geometric sequence is multiplied by to get the next term. Anyway, over here, though, the R stands for the input. It's just the way it's written. So that's kind of confusing. And the other thing that's confusing is the N, the number of terms in the sequence. That gets a little confusing, too. And in a minute, we're going to talk about this thing right here, and that is also a little bit confusing for this question here. So let's go ahead and get into it, shall we? So the N, let's start there. The most common mistake people make is they say, oh, well, I'm going from 2 to 7, so that's a difference of 5, and that is wrong. So check this out. If we had all 7 terms starting on 1, not 2, N would be 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You just add them all up, right? Well, if we're starting on 2 instead of 1, we're only taking 1 term away. Turns out we actually have 6, not 5. So it's not really subtraction. You're counting. So N is equal to 6, not 5. So that's the first place to get into trouble. So now let's talk about this U sub 1, which is sometimes called A sub 1. That subscript right there, that's actually the input. The problem here is it's not 1. It's the first one. And in this situation, the first thing we're going to start adding on, the first term we're going to add is the second term of the sequence. So the first thing we're going to add is the second term of the sequence. That gets a little confusing. So our input's actually going to be 2, not 1. So let's go ahead and plug in the 2 and then see what happens here, right? So let's go ahead and do our work down here. We're going to have 36 times 1/4 negative 1/4 squared. Now be careful with the squaring, right? You have to do the numerator and denominator. A negative times a negative is positive. 1 times 1 is 1. And of course, 4 times 4 is 16. And let's go ahead and reduce that. 4 goes into both 16 and into 36. So when we're all said and done, 9/4. All right. So let's go ahead and plug everything in now. So we've got all of our values. We've got our first term that we're adding. We've got N and we have R. So we have our first term, we have N, we have R. Let's take a look, make sure we've got all of this figured out because this right here is kind of ugly. So let's be careful. So our first term is 9/4. So that goes right there. And then 1 minus, and we're using parentheses here because we have another negative. So the R, the common ratio, is a negative. So I'm going to put it in parentheses and raise to the power of N, and N is 6. And then in the denominator, we have 1 minus R. So 1 minus R is negative 1/4. So we're going to put that into parentheses. And let's go ahead and see if we can clean this up now. Now, it's a good idea to do a little bit of the work on paper instead of just trying to plug this thing into a calculator. Most likely, that's going to be a mistake just waiting to happen. Too many embedded parentheses and stuff, and it's not too difficult to clean up. So let's do that. So the first thing first, let's talk about this 6. This 6 means negative 1/4 times itself 6 times. So if you have a negative number raised to the power of a positive number, that's going to become positive, right? So anyway, we're going to have 1/4 to the power of 6. So 1 to the power of 6 is 1, 4 to the power of 6 is 4, and it's positive. So we're subtracting a positive number. These two don't make a positive here because you have to do the exponent before you would multiply. So there's the numerator. Now let's talk about the denominator here. If we get a common denominator and then just add them together, and it is an add in this case because there's no exponent, so negative and a negative makes a positive, so that's 5/4. So what we have now is we have that numerator divided by 5/4. And the way we divide by a fraction is, of course, to multiply by its reciprocal. And as you can see, those 4s will reduce. So we're going to have 9/5 times 1 minus 4. 1 minus 1/4 to the power of 6. So we plug that into the calculator, and that's what we get. 1.799560547. Now, If you're taking a test, I would write that number down, but not as my final answer. If you're doing IB, like what I'm teaching, you're going to do 3 significant figures. So that means you're going to look at the first 3 non-zero numbers, and you're going to round to that one right there. So that means we're going to look here. That's greater than 4, right? So we're going to round up. So our final answer is going to be 1.80. So anyway, I really enjoyed doing this question with you. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something from it. Just be careful with all that notation. Use lots of space. Take your time. You get this. Hope you have a great day.